Wide receivers. Let's get to the top tier here. I have a feeling you might be going back to the well with one Nico Collins this week.
That would be a pretty good assumption. He had 15 more targets. He is talking about, not that this is not nearly as a hot take or against the grain as what you said with Chase Brown, but I feel not vindicated because I don't think people really disagreed. Nico Collins is one of the best wide receivers in the league. Full stop.
I think it's something to, not a hot take in the sense that people didn't already think he was good, but that you're saying, listen, this guy is
Yeah, he's as good as
upper,
Jefferson and those guys.
right? Like preeminent receiver. Yeah,
Yeah.
I get it. Speaking of Jamison Williams, 70-yard touchdown yesterday.
Yeah. That's when things went from bad to worse.
Now you've been spot on with Nico, and even if Tank Dell is in,
Doesn't matter.
just hard to avoid somebody like him. Metcalf is another one in that spot. I have no problems there, but 7K scares me a little bit because they do have JSN, they do have Tyler Lockett, they do have Kenneth Walker, Zach Charbonnet still being used in the passing game. That's a pretty steep price point. But I'll tell you what, Malik Neighbors at 7,300. If anyone wants to argue that he's too expensive, you're flat out wrong.
No, definitely not. Will he play?
5,900 in week one. This guy, I said I'm playing all of them. He was my highest exposed player, 5,900 in week one. I believe you had a ton of him as well, because they don't have anybody else outside of Wanda. What's the opposite of 3 yards in a cloud of dust? Because that's Wan'Dale Robinson.
Yeah. I mean, Neighbors, it's a ridiculous situation. It doesn't, I don't even know how good he really is. He seems very good, but like, it doesn't really matter how good you are. He has 52 targets in 4 games.
Yeah. And he didn't even play the entirety of last game.
Yeah, we'll see if he plays, obviously. But it's a concussion, so that's good in the sense that there's no, like,
No.
you're not going to come back for like a set of snaps.
Exactly. And it's not like they're going to test it out pregame. We will know.
Yeah.
Wan'Dale, that wasn't a criticism of him either, but it's very obvious who Wan'Dale Robinson is. He had his yards per target. He had 71 yards on 14 targets with 11 receptions, dude. That's just who he is. Daniel Jones used him to pick up 5 or 6 on first down, maybe pick up the first down on third. You see what I'm saying? Wan'Dale Robinson's not a game breaker by any stretch. That's Malik Neighbors, and he's just going to keep getting peppered with targets as long as he's out there. It's a tough matchup in Seattle. That's my only reservation here. Playing in Seattle is a really tough place to play.
It is. Volume can trump all of it, and probably will, but it's not the ideal matchup.
How about Jamar?
I mean, you're paying the premium, which is fine. Is Jamar Chase. I'm not in love with the situation yet. Maybe we'll see this in a 51 point total. Jamar Chase is not getting volume that is even close to what you need for these price points. Now, he's Jamar Chase and he's breaking off 60-yard touchdowns. The guy's got 24 targets in 4 games.
Yeah, what is going on with that?
That's not going to get it done.
It is a little bit concerning when you consider the fact that he's the highest priced receiver on the slate.
And they've been losing. So it's not a game. It's not like, oh, well, they've been killing everybody. And so like they don't need him. No, they need him. And it's not really there just yet. Now it's 4 games in and Burrow's thrown the ball again, a respectable amount, but I'm not in love with the target share just yet.
Also, Jamar Chase history against this Ravens defense is not good.
It's not my first click, I'll tell you that.
He did have 8 for 200 and a touchdown against them back in 2021. That seems pretty decent.
That you could work with.
You could work with that. Not my first click. My first click is Nico.
Yes.
Yeah. Man, we're kind of in lockstep on a few of these today.
Good.
Mid-range. I think it's loaded. It's Jaden Reed for me.
Yeah. I think the Megamind triple level quadruple genius plays Zay Flowers.
Yes, I was thinking that too. I got him written down.
But you kind of know, you saw, I think this just encapsulates it perfectly. Zay Flowers was not needed against Buffalo in a
Nope.
big game at home. And that could happen here too. But if he is needed, he's a really good player. What about going right back to Deontay Johnson?
By the way, based on recent performance, Zay Flowers is egregiously overpriced, but he's not overpriced given this 51 point total.
He's just, it's not a. So when you say overpriced, this is how I think of it. There can be many reasons why a guy is overpriced. He could be overpriced because of the matchup. He could be overpriced because of his role. He could be overpriced because he sucks.
Mm-hmm.
For me, the only reason that Zay Flowers is overpriced is his role. He doesn't suck, and the matchup's great.
Yeah, he's overpriced because of the way that Ravens games have gone in the past 2 weeks.
Exactly. But I'll take one.
Me
It's
too.
not like, well, this guy sucks. Like Zay Flowers is a really good player, and he can absolutely have a blow up game.
What's going to happen is the week's going to be over, and you're going to either say, what a smart move it was to pay that little extra on Flowers when nobody wanted to go there. And I don't know what his ownership will look like. I think he'll probably be around 10%.
Oh, I'd take the under.
You think lower, like 5 or so?
Yeah.
Or you're going to go, I can't believe I played Zay Flowers at 6,400.
Very more often than not, you'll be saying that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it could win you a tournament.
You're saying, would I go back to Deontay Johnson? Yes.
Yeah.
You don't think you look, I know this matchup isn't nearly as good and people would I'm sure there's people in chat or watching after the fact. By the way, if you ever want to listen in podcast form, you know where to find us. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that would be like, this is a great secondary. The Bears coverage has been great this year. And to that, Ben, I would answer, you're absolutely right. I would also say that since Andy Dalton took over, Deontay Johnson has a 35% target share. He has 60% of the team's air yards, and he has 7 end zone targets. That's insane.
Yeah, I was super bullish on Deontay Johnson to start the year. I didn't know
Yeah.
that I didn't know that it wasn't going to work with Bryce Young. He just continues to grade out really well. Pittman is right next to him, and I do think that this could be a really good spot for Pittman. He had 9 targets, 6 for 113 against Pittsburgh. He has the same number of touchdowns as I do this year. Like, just, it can only go up from an upside standpoint. So he's probably the guy I'm going to select, but there's a lot of good 6K options.
I like him too. It's just there's too much opportunity there. And sorry, he has six end zone targets in the last 2 weeks. Nico Collins has 7, but only 3 of those count. So he had 4 in a row on the final drive of that game with Davis Mills in at quarterback. Literally 4 plays in a row into the end zone.
Nico's just an absolute. Nico's going to be the highest priced wide receiver on a slate this year.
You're probably right. But Deontay Johnson's just getting peppered and in the red zone. Target share is through the roof. I'll go Jaden Reed here. You're gonna go Deontay?
No, I'm gonna go Michael Pittman.
Oh, Pittman. Okay.
I like Deontay quite a bit, but I think Michael Pittman is a really good buy low candidate here.
I agree, and I think this is the deepest tier of any position.
I'd agree with that.
Zay, we didn't even mention Ayuk. I think Ayuk at 6,300 could be sneaky. Him or Debo, it's a good spot. DJ Moore against Carolina looks decent. There's a lot here. Brian Thomas Jr., Christian Kirk. What about those guys?
Well, definitely, because I said I'm going to use Lawrence as a paydown option. Like, you use Lawrence as a paydown option, it's going to be those guys.
Exactly.
Wandale.
What about Amari?
Maybe he is washed. He went awful last week. And then having said that, if you watch that game, Amari Cooper caught an 80-yard touchdown. Worst call of the week by far. They flat out missed it. That was not a hold. And believe me, I was not rooting for them. That would have changed everything for him. So it's.
How many plays has he had like that just like already on the season?
I mean, they just screwed it up. I don't know what they were looking at. It was a rare good moment for Deshaun Watson. And whatnot. So it was like, and then they just call it back. I don't get it.
I think I'm willing to go back to Amari here, as a matter of fact. I wasn't sure if I wanted to. I I'm open to it, Ben. I'm open to it. The biggest problem with him, with Amari, is the drops this season. Like there's a lot that hasn't been on him, but then there's some that has been on him. And last I looked, yeah, he leads the league in drops, which is a problem. But does it
He's
matter?
not having a good year, but that's, it's still there.
Let's talk tight ends. Oh no, I'm sorry. Real quick
Yeah.
at the bottom. I'll go back to Cortland Sutton. His target share is
I knew you were
insane.
going to do that. I knew
Why
you
his
were going to do
dude,
that.
his target share is nuts this year. And I know that Knicks has struggled, but like you have a really banged up defensive line for the Raiders. My guess is Max Crosby doesn't play again. They can't get pressure on the quarterback. From a coverage standpoint, they're what, middle of the league? Portland Sutton's target share is crazy, man. And okay, they've had bad matchups. He's targeted in the red zone as much as anybody in the league, which is crazy because this team doesn't even get into the red zone. Like Cortland Sutton on the season is for end zone targets. Think about this. A team that doesn't score points because they've had such bad matchups and a rookie quarterback. Cortland Sutton is tied for third in end zone targets this season, has 11 red zone targets, which is second behind only Nico Collins, and 4 of Nico Collins were in garbage time with Davis Mills at quarterback. So you could really argue that Cortland Sutton has the most red zone targets in the league, tied with Jamison Williams and Deontay Johnson, and a target share that is sitting at 28%. I think he's still really viable here.
He is obviously.
I'm
Now his
laddering.
targets are less efficient, clearly.
Mhm.
Like they're not great targets, but you can overcome that. And they are back at home against Las Vegas. That's not anything I'm too worried about. So listen, you're never gonna hear me push back on Cortland Sutton. I'll go Wandale, just not even with the caveat if Neighbors sits. If Neighbors sits, he's gonna become extremely popular. Even if he doesn't, you could use him. He just has so much PPR value.
Yeah. Eddie Mush says targets aren't as important when the catchable ball rate is 40%. I look, dude, it's not lost on me. I totally understand that. What I'm saying is you face some tough teams and some really tough defenses. Now, yes, if you want to put a lot of that on Bo Nix and be like, look, the catchable ball's not great. But at the same time, I'm not totally out on Sutton just yet. We saw him. Okay, the best matchup, would you agree, by far the best matchup he had was against that Tampa team, right? That secondary?
Yeah, clearly.
7 for 11, 68 yards. Had a target and had 2 targets in the end zone, one of which was a tough ball, but semi-catchable. And it just didn't, he didn't catch it. But even last week, 3 for 60 and a touchdown. He's getting targeted downfield. I still think there's some value. And you know what, Ben? Maybe I'm just way off here. It's totally
Well,
possible.
It's one of these things too. And I'm not saying you can operate it, but like Bo Nix, okay, he's struggling. Is he really not, what is he going to throw 4 touchdown passes on the year? Like I think that's probably a little overblown. Like he's going to have some multiple touchdown games in there. And if he does, it's hard to think Sutton's not involved. So like I'm not completely out. Like Bo Nix has 1 touchdown
I
for the
get it.
year
And
in
it went
4
to Sutton.
games.
And
I'm
it was
saying it can't get
Sutton.
worse than that. It
Right.
cannot get worse than that.
Just hear me out. All right. So again, I'm not trying to convince anyone of anything, but you,
Mm.
near 30% target share, horrible matchups all year. The one good matchup, he's 7 for 11. Second in end zone or red zone targets, third in end zone targets, and 5th in deep attempts this season. So like what I'm saying is if it happens, like if you get that game where it connects, it's going to explode. Or he just has 3 for 9 for 40 again.
Yeah, I mean, I think the range is deep enough where you don't have to go here. I think that's a fact. And I think he's clearly in play.
This is similar to where I was with Pickens last week. It's just, hey, it hasn't been there, but all everything lines up for a
Going back to
decent
my
game.
checklist. It's the same
Well,
checklist
it's the same
to me.
checklist. Yeah.
Is Sutton good? Yes.
Yes.
He's a good player. Is the matchup good? I think yes. Easiest
And is,
matchup they've had.
and is Sutton clearly the clear undisputed number one?
Yeah. Now his team sucks and his quarterback
Correct.
sucks.
Correct.
That's what you're evaluating.
And I'm willing to take some shots. And Pickens, if he broke that tackle, he ends up with like a 150-yard game and a touchdown and breaks the slate. Anyway, where else are you going in the low tier?
I don't have much else, honestly.
I think there's Dobbs. Jordan Whittington is viable this week for sure.
That sounds like a made up person.
You don't have to love it. But he played 97% of snaps last week, led the Rams in targets, was second behind Puka, or not Puka Nacua.
Tutu Atwell.
Tutu
Demarcus
Atwell.
Robinson.
Tutu Atwell. In yards, he's $4,600 going up against Green Bay. They're going to need to throw very likely in this game. He's gone from seeing, 50% of snaps to 38% of snaps in the game. That game was without Cooper Kupp, and then 97% of snaps. So what happened was, and we'll see if Demarcus Robinson even plays. If he doesn't, that's just more Jordan Whittington I'll get to. But Tyler Johnson, who was playing a significant amount of snaps, played 16% of snaps last game. He just basically didn't play.
Again, I don't know how low I'll need to go, but yeah, you mentioned him, and this is a guy that I actually do know a decent amount about. He's got some skills. There's no doubt about it. Could be that type of player in terms of red zone targets. So if he's going to take on that role, you could do worse sub 5.
Romeo Dobbs, Dontavian Wicks as well. I didn't throw him in
Yeah,
there,
attachments to your quarterbacks,
Yep, I like Green Bay. Give me Cortland Sutton in the low tier. Who are you taking?
I'm gonna take Wandale again. I think you got to
Okay.
know what you're getting into, but yeah.